They call it the Fairy Glen. No one in Rostrevor really knows why. The legend behind the name has vanished in the mists of time. But the leafy path along the Yellowwater River has for years been one of the favourite haunts for people in the village. Now, however, the glen is under threat, for the Newry Area Plan has earmarked land on the opposite side of the glen's path for housing development. Local people have responded with a campaign to save their past. It's spearheaded by artist Colin Turner, who lives in Rostrevor and who has found the glen an inspiration. Time after time he returns to the place to capture its changing moods in the changing seasons.
Colin, if I could just interrupt you for a moment. Tell me, what is so special for you about the Fairy Glen?
Well, you've only to look at it and you can see what's special about it. I think you have to admit that it's just about one of the most beautiful places you'll meet. And there's another mile or so of it. And it's hard to say whether this is the most beautiful or any 100 yards further up the river. Because whenever I've been passing up and down here every day of my life, and every day it's different. When you get natural surroundings, that's the whole beauty of it. It's ever changing, and that's what a painter needs, to see the familiar in a new light every day.
Well, Colin, how did you actually discover that the glen was under threat?
I was having an exhibition at the Newry Arts Centre, and when I'd hung my pictures, I went up to the coffee bar and I found there was a display by the planning authorities there of all their plans for the next 10 years, and I noticed that they were planning to zone housing for 2/3 of the length of the river. And I just couldn't believe it. Well, imagine turning this into somebody's backyard. Imagine dustbins and litter and, you know, the sort of things that happen round where people live, even though they do their best to keep things neat and tidy. Just this sheer presence of people so close to a natural surrounding is bound to detract from it.
After seeing the plan, Colin immediately set about thwarting the planners. He printed hundreds of handbills urging the people of Rostrevor to support his fight to save the glen. Among the people who rallied to the artist's side were newsagent Kevin Hanna and window cleaner Sean Tinley, who are no strangers to taking on the planners.
A few years back, Sean and myself spearheaded a local campaign to save what we know locally as the Meadow here, when actually had been sold out to a private developer. And that time when planning had been applied for, the locals did respond very, very well to the planning authorities. And at that stage we had planning basically rejected, and the council actually stepped in and have bought over what is now known as Cabroni Park, and I think everyone appreciates what was done at that time.
So what's the mood of the village like this time around?
Well, I would say it is quite similar really. The people have known the Fairy Glen for years and have used it a lot, and they don't want to see it basically taken from them. Like, while houses might be needed, we'd rather maybe they'd be situated in a different place, because we don't think we really could replace the Fairy Glen.
Sean, I understand that you don't believe that the houses that are envisaged are needed at all.
I believe Rostrevor is overdeveloped with regard to private housing. Our private housing estate's been dumped in Rostrevor at the expense of local people who are being moved out to Warren Point. And for me, this would be basically what I would be fighting against, as well as destroying the natural beauty of the place.
I had to get some maps, some of the official maps, and paste them up so that people would believe it. It was just, people just sort of threw their hands up in despair and horror that this should be happening again. And why we can't have a green area or something marking it out so that planners at least in future years will know that this is a no-go area, I don't know.
What sort of campaign is actually underway then to thwart the planners?
Well, as I say, I blew the whistle, and from there on it's been individual effort. I often think that to over-organise protests tend to sort of lack credibility. You know, you feel that people are being driven and led rather than doing something off their own bat. But the support has been so terrific. Everybody has been getting in touch with MPs and historic societies, and everybody has been doing their bits.
I understand there was some fight over it many years ago.
Oh yes, it has been recorded like quite a number of years ago, when it was put down to be part of the Canning estate here, which again is the Meadow, another name for the Meadow. And apparently one time the gateway here was blocked off or built up, And the Miss Cunninghams of their day, who lived actually in a Roxburgh hotel, it was a private hotel here, they actually took pickaxes out themselves and in the view of people, and had photographs taken of them removing the block that was made, the wall that was built. And apparently the case did end in the High Court in Belfast, and where a public right-of-way then was established and access had to be left to the Ferry Glen.
The current fight over the Ferry Glen may not involve pickaxes, but the campaigners have a powerful weapon in support from groups like the Ulster Society for the Preservation of the Countryside. Their secretary is Wilfred Capper, the man who helped develop the Ulster Way around the province. And they've been the watchdogs of the countryside for years.
We have an agreement now with the Department of Environment to send us copies of every application for planning in the 6 counties, so that we can turn these up and see what exactly is proposed all over Northern Ireland. And if there's anyone that we think perhaps there's a question of amenity involved, then we can go out and have a look at it and make our comments if we think that they're justified.
What weapons would you have at your disposal to fight plans?
None at all, except just pressure. I have public opinion behind us, and we've been making representations also through the Assembly, and particularly Environment Committee of the Assembly. So that's been a help to us too. There's an awakening interest that wasn't 50 years ago nearly 50 years ago when we started. I think there's a public awareness now that didn't exist before, and an awareness of the need to do something. When we started the Ulster Society for the Preservation of the Countryside, regarded by many people as just interfering busybodies. We had no business questioning anything the planners did, you know. But that whole attitude has changed now, and we work with a willing cooperation of the planning authorities here.
So would you say that nowadays the countryside is better protected than it's ever been?
Yes, I think it is better protected, but at the same time there's more need for protection. I mean, there's people are going out in cars and so on, and there are a lot of vandals about, which didn't exist before the war. I mean, not the same. I don't think it's the same, but just honesty in the public, or realization of the effect of all this vandalism it has.
So it's not just from the planners that the threats are coming?
Oh no, indeed, it isn't, no. The planning people really are very good now. They are doing what they can, and we support them. More often we're behind them rather than opposing them.
But where there is conflict with the planners, Wilfred Capper says local people whose beauty spots are in danger must help themselves. And in Rostrevor, the people who want to preserve the Ferry Glen are confident they will win the day.
I would hope so. I mean, it's one of the sort of things that it's inconceivable that a planner could do it now that he knows the situation.
So you're not going to let all this go lightly?
No, it's part of me, and it's part of most of the villagers. We all have our memories. Things like running down from school at lunchtime to see if the river was red, blue, or bottle green when the dye works opened the vats, and paddling in it to see if you could get your feet dyed. So there's colour appreciation for you. It never worked. But, you know, learning to fish and paddling about and building dams, all the things. Then taking your girlfriend up there when you're in your teens, you know.
Maybe that's a good point to stop.